on this computer. Here we go.
Okay.
Yes, back on nearly the end of June, and very, very delighted to share a VC legend, somebody who John and I used to watch before we ever made videos. It's Fred, Big Star 1000, all the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Well, let's not get carried away with some. Calm down. But I mean, I could say the same thing about you guys. I've been watching you for years, so it's a true delight meeting you.
Yeah. And I have to say, Fred is definitely responsible for me spending quite a lot of money on records over the last few years. But so we're going to do the normal thing. We've each got 7 records. We don't know what anybody else has got, and we're just going to talk about them. These are music that we've been enjoying in the last few weeks. I'm going to kick off. It's going to be me, Fred, John. That's the sequence. This is. So there's a local record shop in my town of Faversham. So here in the UK, we're kind of easing our lockdown, and it's all feeling a bit weird. I had to go into a record shop wearing a face mask, and then be given a pair of gloves, and then sort of sanitizing. And there was only 2 people in the shop, and it was. I just felt I had to buy a record. This poor guy, you know, he'd opened it up, and it was like walking into a clinic or something. Anyway, this is a very weird Russian pressing of I think this is the first Joe Zawinul album. Yeah, I don't recommend audio clarity. It's anything but, actually, but it's quite cheap. But this is a kind of a journey into something called the third stream, which I wasn't really aware of, but it's a space where jazz meets classical. And this is a collaboration with William S. Fisher, who I'm pretty sure, Fred, you have shown, because I've got him on my wants list. You can probably talk about.
Chains is it's a great
Circles.
Is Chains the name of the album?
Circles.
Or
it's Circles.
Circles. I don't know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Chains. Is Chains one of the tracks of Circles?
Yeah, Chains. Yeah, it's a great album. Got that album.
Yeah. It's one of the main tracks of the album. Yeah. So it's on Embryo Records. On the black and white label. Yeah, I've got that record. I haven't played for a while, but yeah.
Great
but third stream really is a fantastic sort of subgenre of music. And Moondog is kind of a prime exponent of that that third stream.
And this is Joe Zawinul's kind of slightly I wouldn't say a cynical take, but I mean it's called The Rise and Fall of the Third Stream. But it is actually a record that really does bridge jazz and classical arrangements really, really nicely. And of course, this was, I think, recorded when Joe Zawinul was still with Cannonball Adderley and was about to hang out with Miles and do Bitches Brewing in a Silent Way. And it's a very beautiful record. There's some really lovely tracks. I particularly love From Vienna with Love. So there's a couple of covers, and then it's mainly William Fisher penned tunes and arrangements, but a very, very nice album.
Good stuff.
Fred, take
your
role.
Oh, well, yeah, it's funny you mentioning third stream as well, because right before this making this video, I was listening to Jacques Lussier trio. You know, they made those like crossover jazz classical Bach albums, which, I mean, they kind of, you know, you can find them anywhere in every junk shop, but they're really quite good. You know, if you're in the mood for a bit of classical music. I'm trying to slightly follow what you've got, and I know, Mark, you're a bass player, or you are a bass player, aren't you?
I am a bass player, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and here is one of my favorite records of the past few weeks, and it's a classic Blue Note, bass on top by Paul Chambers of 1957.
Wow.
It's a fantastic record. I think if I was making a Blue Note top 10 again, I would certainly put this in. Features Kenny Burrell on guitar, Hank Jones on piano, and Art Taylor on drums. And they play mostly standards, but it's got some beautiful bowed double bass on this. Like, it's really fantastic. It has a sort of a classical feel at times. You know, it's hard bop, but with some touches of third stream, really, and which is why you know, I thought, you know, maybe it's a good segue. Have you guys got this
No.
this record?
I got that one. Yeah, I got that. I actually got it. I got a weird issue of that, not with the other one he did on Blue Note. Is it called The Whims of something or other? With which I got John Coltrane on it as well, actually.
But if you don't have it already, or if you want to upgrade, I saw that at the end of the year it will be issued as a tone poet.
Yeah.
This record
Right.
in I think November or December. I'm not going to upgrade because this is a beautiful like 73 sort of. This is one of these black Blue Notes.
Yeah.
These sound great. 73, 74 press, and I don't have any need to upgrade this. But if you don't have it, it's, you know, it's fantastic to have. Anyway.
Okay.
That's
another bass player, Harry Miller, who's a UK bass player. And Fred, you talked about, I know you did a UK jazz thing, and also because sadly, just after the last, or I think it was just before the last session we did, Keith Tippett died.
Yeah, I heard that.
This is Harry Miller's Issy Pingo, which is a band with Mark Charig, Mike Osborne, Malcolm Griffiths, Keith Tippett, and Lewis Maholo. And I was actually at this gig where it was recorded at an art centre in South London called Battersea Art Centre.
Wow.
And Richard Williams, the writer, said he thought this has got some of the best piano playing he'd ever heard in his life on it. And it was, I remember the night, he was playing an upright. He wasn't even playing a grand piano, he was playing an old upright in there. Incredible piano playing in this record. And the weather was terrible that night. It was like snowdrifts, and I had to spend our night in a van covered in sacks, sleeping outside because we couldn't move the band. But a great record, this one. It was kind of like a smaller version of some of the bands around at the time, like Brotherhood of Breath, but in a way it's a little bit more Mingus-like than that.
I see it on Ogan, which is the Blue Notes label. And did Harry Miller run Ogan?
He did. His wife, Hazel, his wife, actually ran the label. Yeah, and it's got some great Mike Osborne, who's a fantastic alto player. Got some great. But Keith Tippett just turns this clapped out kind of upright piano into sounding like a harp or something. It's quite extraordinary, actually. Good album.
Okay, well, I guess my connection's a bit tenuous in the sense that, but it's an album that is fronted by another keyboard player. This is Wishes Kochi, and the keyboard player is Masabumi Kikuchi, Japanese pianist. This is from 1976. And this record sounds like if Miles had continued his electric period with actually many of the same players, but had decided that he really wanted to have Anthony Jackson on the bass instead of Michael Henderson, he may well have recorded this album. I'm pretty sure someone on the VC shared this ages ago, and that's how I've ended up with it. Was it you, John?
Yeah.
There you go.
But it's very sort of moody, and it's got a lot of those kind of long, drony held organ figures that Miles was doing, kind of quite discordant. But I'm really enjoying Anthony Jackson's bass playing around it, and it's got Steve Grossman, Dave Liebman, Reggie Lucas, Al Foster, M. Toomey. I mean, basically all the players who were in that 70s period, and.
Killer lineup.
It's a hell of a
lineup.
Yeah.
Dave Liebman and Grossman. That's just amazing.
Exactly. And it's very spacious. It's very spacious, but it's also very dynamic. So there's a lot to listen to. I mean, I played the record this morning, and it was so quiet at the beginning. I mean, there was so little happening. I actually had to check that the record player was still switched on, but it was just, you know, very, very gentle, and then gets quite frenetic. But I particularly like the track La Mocha Esta Dormindo, which is the third track on side one.
Great record.
Yeah, very nice.
In fact, Masabumi Kikuchi was going to be in Miles's band. They actually rehearsed together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the mid-70s. Yeah, there was a band with him and Sly Stone, would you believe, playing bass, and Larry Cohen.
I heard that Sly Stone was going to play with Miles. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
wow.
And it was during the period when he was, and I think they did a couple of rehearsals or something. And then Miles kind of just went into a dip, so it never happened. But that was going to be the band, I think.
Wow. Amazing.
On the Corner, completely inspired by Sly Stone anyway. I think it was, him listening to a bit of Sly. Well, I'm going to make a segue back to, because you were talking about Ogun Records and this South African connection. And just before making this video, I was revisiting this amazing record, which I've never really seen on the VC. I don't think I've seen this record shown. It's Moses Taiwa Molelekwa. So his surname is spelled Molelekwa. And this guy was a South African pianist. He sadly died in 2001. He was found hanged, and his wife was strangled. And he released this record in 2000. And this is a very, 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 very fine record. It's kind of, I don't know how to peg this. It's got some elements of drum and bass. He's obviously very influenced by Herbie Hancock and Monk as well. You've got vocals by Flora Purim on this. You've got some Latin vibes. It goes from one thing to another, but within this kind of chaotic, kind of like very versatile kind of approach, you get a sense of unity that he was into really rhythmic drum and bass music. It's a mix of pre-programmed drums and also live instrumentation. The songs are instantly memorable. This was reissued by Matsuli Music, the label that reissues all the South African stuff like Batsumi, and they released lots of different things. This is a shot of Moses playing on his piano. I'm sorry, but I've got a lamp right in front of me just to give me some light, and that's what the reflection is. I apologize, but this came out in 2018, reissued 2018. It's an amazing record. I very highly recommend this to anyone who likes sort of, like, it's kind of the bridge between a sort of trip hop, breakbeat, drum and bass, and jazz. I mean,
when was it?
Have you got this record? Have you heard it?
Yeah, I know Moses, actually. I knew him quite well.
You knew him?
Yeah, and I was actually in South Africa when he killed himself and possibly killed his wife as well. It was completely, totally inexplicable. No, we'd just been working with him. In fact, I think my friend Andrew Missingham produced that record, and he recorded it. I wasn't there. It was a year before he'd recorded it, and we did a tour with Moses. And there's a classical pianist called Joanna McGregor in the UK. And they did a two piano tour of mostly townships. It's quite extraordinary, actually. So Moses was playing, as well as playing his own music, was also playing some contemporary classical stuff, and Joanna was playing some. It was amazing, and it was such
I'm so blown away. I'm blown. I'm glad I brought this record out, because we wouldn't have got that story otherwise. I mean, his suicide and the death thing was completely inexplicable. Everyone was so shocked. It was just such a weird thing to happen, actually, because he was a very, very quiet, peaceful guy, very interested in, I remember the last time I saw him actually was with Andrew and Joanna, and we were in a bar, I think, and she had some scores with her, and it was a composer called George Crumb, who made like graphic scores. So all his scores were not like kind of staves and notes, they were all like pictures, and he was just completely amazed by this. How did you get to meet him?
I was head of music for the British Council for quite a long time, and we were also doing a big project I have quite a lot of connections in South Africa as well. When we were doing a big project, we were just building up to doing a big project in South Africa. So I met Moses.
He was from Johannesburg, I think. Yeah. And I was, because there's very little known about him really as a person. He wasn't
very well. He was very quiet.
I think he played with Miriam Makeba in the 80s, and he also played with. Well, I think he was asked to play by Hugh Masekela in his band. I don't know if he did play with Masekela, but
So,
this is a fantastic. The record is it's every time I've got this record playing at home and somebody comes in, instantly people ask, "What is this? Where can we get it?" All my record nerd friends wanted a copy of it because it's a fantastic, and you guys, you can get this easily. I mean, it's
I
from,
didn't actually
I
know
think
it come out on vinyl, actually.
it's made in the UK, I think,
Yeah.
and it's called Genes and Spirits, and came out, I think, in 2000. This guy is about when I read his, he was born in '73, which is it would be the same age as I am. It makes me sad a bit just to think he died so early. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, it was just a real shock, but it was a good, yeah, I need to get that. I didn't know it come out on vinyl.
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
You're on,
Anyway.
John.
I'm on, right. So next up, keeping with actually kind of a theme we've had over the last couple of videos. So I've just got need to move my cursor around a bit. Yeah, just started listening to this again. I hadn't played this record for a long time.
Oh, I love TNT. Wow, what a good choice.
I think it's a Jeff Parker connection from the other two. I think this is such a great record. This one.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's definitely their best record, I think, and one of the best from that whole time. Actually, it came out I think 99, wasn't it, or 98 or 99 or something.
98, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful record, actually. And just
the second song, swung from the gutters,
yeah,
is the most amazing bit of like post rock. It's just like it gets me every time. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I didn't think that. It's so crisp.
and the track, the suspension bridge at Igatsu Falls as well. It's really beautiful. It's just got some beautiful. The whole album just works as a record, I think, as an album. I mean, you can just listen to it straight through. It's almost kind of one you kind of want to have on CD rather than vinyl, just to listen to the whole thing all the way through. But anyway, it's great. This was a reissue from a few years ago, but it's just great stuff anyway. Actually, highly recommend. Definitely, if you like any of that, and it sounds so fresh as well. I mean, considering it's over 20 years old, this thing now. Sounds really, really good.
It's funny you mentioning the CD thing, because I was talking to TNT to a friend a few months ago, and he was arguing to me that the best way of listening to TNT is on CD, and I think you're probably right, because it goes into Millions is great too. Millions will never whatever will never die. Their other album, such a great record too. Great band, yeah.
Well, no connection at all between that and what I'm about to show. This is a 12-inch single. It's on the Taxi record label. That's the Sly and Robbie record label. And I had this is Eni Kamoza, and the track is called Trouble You or Trouble Me. Came out in 1983, and I had the original Taxi 7-inch. And I've got a large record collection, particularly from the late 70s into the mid 80s. And I used to do a lot of house parties. As I was growing up, I tended to be living in a lot of different squats in London. And there was one particular party that we were having, and I was DJing, and it was about 4 a.m, and I just really wanted to go to sleep. And there was so much trust, I just left the party. When I came down the following morning, most of my 7-inch reggae collection had also disappeared, and which was very sad. So this was really nice to be reacquainted with this track, and I love the Sly and Robbie sound of the early 80s, which recorded. I'm not sure if this was at Compass Point, but there was that whole all the work they did with Grace Jones. Yeah,
Wally Badarou.
Wally Badarou.
Yeah.
And they work with the Tamlins, the Viceroys. I mean, there's just a whole load of amazing 12s from this period, and it's just the crispness. It was there. Sly was really great on the synth drums, and it wasn't a gimmick, but it was really adding to the sound. Black Uhuru, of course, around this time as well. So yeah,
they're incredible. They're incredible. Black Uhuru. I couldn't believe when they reproduced that sound live completely.
John and I discovered that we'd also both been at the same gig at the Rainbow in Finsbury Park with Black Uhuru, act by Sly and Robbie, and that was one of the best gigs I've ever been to. It was just a massive sound. I then actually went on tour with the same sound crew who had done all the PA for them, and they had quite a few stories to tell. But yeah, that was great.
You guys have amazing stories. I mean, that Moses story is like, I mean, I'm just recovering from that.
I'll also tell my friend Andrew that you were talking about the record, but he'd be really pleased actually, because he was.
I'm still recovering. Yeah. I'll just move on. Here is a record that I showed a few weeks ago. I thought I'd bring a Melbourne record because I may as well be repping my crew here. And I've spoken about this record. It's a band called Big Yawn, like when you're yawning. And they're from Melbourne, and the album is called No. And they're a 4-piece, and there's 3 live samplers and a drummer. And what you got there is kind of like ambient techno, ambient dub, or dub techno, a little bit of rock influence. It's kind of a mix of a little bit of future jazz in there, but it's mostly electronic music. I love this. It's one of my favorite records of the past year or so. Came out this year in 2020, and it's on Research Records, which is the same label as Mildlife, which you probably both know Mildlife, or are you acquainted with Mildlife? No?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I love Mildlife. Yeah.
Mildlife is amazing. I've seen them live twice already.
I saw them in Ramsgate.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, in front of about 50 people. Amazing.
They're amazing. They're amazing. I saw them supporting Stereolab recently as well. They were quite good. But this record here is on the same label. They're label mates of Mildlife.
Right.
And I very highly recommend this record. It's just addictive. It's electronic music, but with some slightly jazzy influences, and Big Yawn. Yeah, very good record.
Okay, that's a great tip. Yeah, I loved that Mildlife record. Was just the first time I heard it.
It is different in my life, though. It's not the same. We're not in the same ballpark of music, but it's still great. I mean, it's still amazing.
This is something I showed a while ago, actually. This is Bernd Friedman, who's a German kind of electronic artist, with Jackie Liebezeit from Cannes, and they made a whole series of records called Secret Rhythms, and this one is Secret Rhythms 3, I think. No, Secret Rhythms 5. And really interesting, kind of just the way it features Jackie's playing and builds around his and Jackie Liebezeit, also known as Flanger, which was a kind of making electronic dance music really around late 90s, early noughties. Just really interestingly put together. Lots of real instrumentation mixed up with the programming. Nice live kind of sound to some of the tracks as well, even though there's obviously a lot of Pro Tools going on here as well. But yeah, so really interesting. If you like Jackie Liebezeit's drumming, this is a great setting to hear. And
love Jackie.
I was thinking about Krautrock collection with the last one.
And who doesn't? Who doesn't like Jackie Liebezeit drumming? You'd have to be, I don't know. I'm not going to say. I'll get in trouble.
Well, yeah, no connection, but this is just a record that arrived last week. This is Dee Dee Bridgewater and Afro Blue, just been reissued on Mr. Bongo. Really, really nice pressing. And it was very expensive, previously, to try and get hold of this. It's a difficult record to find. I reckon fairly early on in her career. I think it was recorded in Japan, probably, that's why it was so expensive. But it's just a beautiful record from start to finish. Lovely covers of stuff like Little Bee's poem. The track Love from the Sun. So I do a radio show twice a week at the moment, and we've had incredible weather here. and I did a whole show where every song had the sun in the title, and we kicked off with this. It was just like a homage to the power of the sun, very beautiful, and also
You
another
probably got
cover of,
to go with versions of that song, actually.
yeah, well, there's a beautiful Roy Ayers version of as well of that. But also, People Make the World Go Round makes another appearance, one of my favorite songs. And yeah, just highly recommended. Just really lovely pressing. The whole album is really sweet. And I'm not always a great fan of jazz vocal albums, I have to say, but I think this is there's no kind of grandstanding. It's just really like she uses her voice like another instrument, and it's very beautiful. And what a lovely
She
cover.
made
It
that
is a
really nice
beautiful
song.
record.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Go on. Go ahead,
No,
Fred.
go on, John. Go on, John.
I was just going to say she made that really nice one with Stanley Clarke as well, the one with
Yes,
the blue cover.
with her pregnant on the front. Yeah, yeah,
Just Family. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's cool.
That's the one.
Just Family. But the Afro Blue is a fantastic record. You're right. It cost a bit of money to get from, because it was a Japanese, Japan only press, I think, on Trio Records. I remember, having to order it from Japan and stuff. But it's great. It's been, it's widely available to people now because it's, it's the way it should be. I mean, like why have we got all these exclusive things? It's nice for people to get it. Everyone to get it. Am I next? I'm next. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll continue. Well, since you're talking about this, a lady of jazz or a lady of, I've just recently discovered this record. I'm going to say it's a pretty shallow way of discovering a record. I was hipped to this record by the YouTube algorithm, and those bastards put this really beautiful. That's her. Her name is Hanya Rani. If you'll see that, that's the name. She's called Hanya Rani. She's Polish, and she's incredibly beautiful. She's stunning. And on the thumbnail, it says it was the last song, Now Run, live in Madrid. And so I just clicked on it because it was just solo piano, and she's basically a female Niels Frahm. She plays kind of modern classical, beautiful kind of like Ian Tiersen, the French pianist, or the French composer, or Niels Frahm, or Olafur Arnalds, who tours with her. This is on Gondwana Records, which is the label on which you find Matthew Halsall, the Manchester jazz musician. And I highly recommend this. It's a beautiful, beautiful sort of modern classical solo piano record. It's called Essia. So she's Polish. She grew up in Warsaw and she lives in Berlin. And she has the good taste. I'm not putting a face on the record cover because she would be accused of selling records just because of the, on the strength of a face. But she's fantastic. And I watched this video and I thought, I'll see on Discogs if there's a copy of it in Australia, and there was one, so I got it, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a beautiful. If you like that sort of solo piano, which I love, it's great. It's a great record.
It can be quite tough when you're very beautiful, I think. I mean, it's like Hilda Goodner-Dottir, the
Speaking from personal experience, John.
Not at all. No. I was just thinking how she's incredibly beautiful, and she never puts her pictures on her records at all, actually. And you kind of, when I met her, I was kind of thought, God, you are absolutely extraordinary. But anyway, so I thought no connection at all with the next one, really. But we're running out of links here. But I've been digging into my kind of improv bit of my record collection, going into digging deep over the last week. So I had a week off, not been working for the last week. And this was Han Bennink's first solo album, the Dutch drummer. Recorded mostly at his house, I think, in his garden. And I just thought the joy of the kind of music making is just great, actually. I mean, he was just, he was obviously playing drums and percussion, but he's also playing kind of weird instruments he's made at home and so forth. It's just got this great kind of homemade sound to it. And the cover's got little feathers stuck on it and the kind of little Dutch flag in the corner and all kinds of stuff like that on it. And
I
it's
was wondering, I was looking at the cover, thinking to myself, is like, am I imagining this stuff on the cover, or is there really stuff on
no,
the?
there's a little white feather on there, and a Dutch flag, and all kinds of bits and pieces stuck on the front of it as well. And he's signed the back and all this kind of stuff as well. It's just kind of just the kind of joy of making noise, I think, as well. And he's a fantastic drummer as well. And this came out on ICP Records, which was the Instant Composers Pool, and one of very many ambient records I got. But anyway, it just sounded great to listen to this again.
Well, I've got no connection, but I am going to make a connection with the fact that the Glastonbury Festival would have been 50 years old and would have been happening this weekend. And somebody who performed apparently at the very first Glastonbury, I think, and who was also featured in the film that came out in 1970, was this woman, Linda Lewis. Very strange cover.
Oh, yeah.
She appears doing an amazing duet with Terry Reid, and you can see that on YouTube. And Linda Lewis, I grew up in the 70s, and she featured, she was on Top of the Pops quite a bit. This album is so much more mature than the kind of pop stuff. This is her working with musicians like Max Middleton, Bobby Tench, Jim Cregan from Family, Danny Thompson. And it's just a really nice singer-songwriter album with just some beautiful songs. Yeah, I mean, I really recommend it. I feel that she's still very undiscovered, Linda Lewis, as a UK. I mean, it's not even just a soul singer. She's just a great songwriter, and made, I think, 3 really good albums. Lark, I know, Fred, you're a fan of that one. Do you know this one?
Lark, I was gonna mention Lark because I think it's a fantastic sort of folk funk kind of soul folk funk record. But this one I haven't got. No,
yeah. I recommend it. It's really, really nice. Really, really nice. A lovely version of. Oh no, it's not a lovely version. No, there's a track called Guffer that's on this. Now there was another a family track on another Linda Lewis that was playing, but yeah, very nice. Just the kind of the mood of those sort of early 70s John Martin records, the acoustic ones, is somehow in this record.
Yeah, that's Lark is like that as well. I think
a
little bit. When you talk about Terry Reid, there's Terry Reid, or even the other Terry Callier, which is complete, like soul and folk in one package. Am I next? Am I next? I've been this week. I've played 2 or 3 times this record. I hadn't played for a while. The Sunbirds. It's a German jazz rock band they made this record in 1971. It's kind of one of these rare groove classics. It's what do you call it? It's kind of a bridge between the MPS sound of Wolfgang Danner and these kinds of it's a Eurojazz classic. It's a beautiful record. Jazz fusion, jazz rock, lovely flute. The drummer, who is also the band leader, is Klaus Weiss, and this has got, I think, Philippe Catherine on guitar, and I did think it was somebody else who was better known, but no, I think he's the best known person on this, Philippe Catherine. It's got lots of lovely Fender Rhodes, beautiful. It's a Eurojazz from the 70s. It's what can I say? It's if you like things like Placebo or Cortex, the French band, or it's kind of and as I said, more the German school of things. Manfred Schuf or Wolfgang Danner. Yeah, definitely that sort of MPS.
So I saw Philip Catherine play with Robert Wyatt. He came over to London and played with Robert Wyatt at a gig in it was a country club. It was the old country club in Haverstock Hill, and it was great. Actually, he was a really good. And I can't remember who else was in the band. It was a great little band. Nobody recorded it or anything. It's just like a one kind of gig. no connection at all, and certainly not difficult to find, really. I've been kind of having a bit of a Jefferson Airplane phase the last few weeks as well. Just great run of albums they made, really, from Ceristic Pillow through to Volunteers. Fantastic records, really. And this is Crown of Creation, which I didn't actually have until I bought it just before the lockdown. I obviously knew the record very well, but I thought I had it and I couldn't find it anywhere in my collection. So it's great to have this again. Actually, this is probably the most kind of straightforward rocky album of all the ones from that kind of period, but just really good. I mean, they're just a great band, I think. You kind of forget almost the kind of the legend of the band. You just forget what a great bunch of musicians they were, really.
There was that amazing clip you shared with me, John, of Jefferson Airplane playing on the roof.
Yeah, that's right. That's what prompted me to get this out. Yeah,
which I'd never seen before the Beatles did it.
Directed by Jean-Luc Godard.
Absolutely.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah,
Not good at that.
The great.
Who also directed the Stones? Yeah, but another beautiful lady, Grace Slick.
Yeah,
on the cover of Surrealistic Pillow, she looks just.
No.
You look at the picture, you go, whoa, wow.
She was on my wall when I was a teenager. I have to say, Grace Slick.
You mentioned him, Fred, a second ago. This is a reissue on the Pure Pleasure record label, which I have to say I've yet to buy a record that doesn't sound absolutely fantastic.
I've got a direct connection for you right now. That's
great. Nice. This is a kind of later period Terry Callier album when he's sounding less folky and is sounding more, I guess, in the kind of R&B kind of genre. And it obviously looks very slick. It's very sort of very polished, presentation. And he revisits Ordinary Joe and Occasional Rain. Particularly the version of Occasional Rain is absolutely beautiful. He also does a cover of Do It Again by Steely Dan, which bizarrely...
I love that song.
Yeah.
Has that got If I Could Change Your Mind on it?
No.
No, it hasn't got that. Okay.
No. But I think not one of the most well-known in the Terry Callier canon, but particularly on this Pure Pleasure re-release, really worth visiting. Great, great players, great guitar playing from Terry Callier, and definitely revealing kind of some other aspects to his voice and sound. Yeah. What's the connection, Fred?
Now, when you're saying Pure Pleasure, I was playing this Weldon Irvine record, which is called Time Capsule.
Yeah.
Which is the second Weldon Irvine record from 1973. I mean, talk about Moses Molekwa before and his tragic early passing. And I think you could say the same thing about Weldon Irvine. He committed suicide outside of, in New York in the street. Actually, he shot himself.
Wasn't it? The front garden of his house or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really very, very gruesome. But he was the band leader and the organist in Nina Simone's band. He actually penned Young, Black and Gifted. And he was young, black, and gifted himself. And this is a great record, in times of Black Lives Matter. Like, again, another record which is totally about black consciousness, about the black man, and about the condition of the African American man at the times. And it's very, very topical when you listen to the lyrics, and even the opening track is this like spoken word thing about him, being a black man in New York. And when I was playing this, I think it really does, it does echo the times we're living in. So this has been reissued by Pure Pleasure, and it sounds great. And there's a track on this, which is the very last track the very last track, called Bananas. It's like 2 minutes 40 of pure Fender Rhodes, funky goodness, it's
Classic.
amazing.
Yeah,
It's a great record.
it's a really good.
You guys have got that? Have you
I
got
haven't
that?
got that. I think I've got that on CD actually. But I love that track, Bananas. Actually, it's
I've
really
got Sinbad, I think that's one of the albums. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I meant to get. I remember seeing that coming out, and I just didn't have any money at the time. But I
I've
must.
got the 3 RCA ones, I think, actually. They're the ones and the rest I've got. Yeah, great stuff.
Very influential on a whole range of other artists. Actually, Weldon Irvin, definitely that kind
Yeah,
of.
on hip hop in the 90s too. Like
Yeah.
I know Q-Tip was a massive fan, and yeah, you get
David Most Deaf, I think, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, but also people like Marcus Miller, Don Blackman, all that, those kind of the what were they called, the Jamaica Boys? Yeah.
Okay, this is something we were talking a bit earlier on about things that sound better on CD than on record. I bought the reissue of this, which came out on, I can't remember which label it was. It was kind of really fancy limited edition kind of press.
Green press.
Yeah, it's terrible. Absolutely awful. I mean, kind of really, not the pressing was fine, but the mastering was terrible on it. And I got 2 or 3 copies of it, sent it back, and then somebody said, buy the CD. This is the latest Japanese CD, just sounds great, and it really does actually. This is the classic record, Giant is Awakened, Horace Tapscott, very early appearance by Arthur Blythe on here. Really brilliant record actually. West Coast kind of avant-garde, crossing over into kind of post-bop. And it's interesting, there's some really, I always remember a car mechanic saying, you should always start buying technology when it's just about to become redundant, because that's when it gets good. And I think a lot of recent CDs sound pretty great, actually, particularly Japanese things that are coming out. And this was a classic example. So yeah, so I actually sending back the vinyl and buying the CD, which was kind of not a VC thing to do at all, really. But
thank you for the tip, because I was interested in getting that reissue on vinyl.
Real Gone, wasn't it? On Real Gone Records, I think it was.
Real Gone, yeah. That was a green, like a bright green.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great that you're saying, because now I'm going to. It's great. Fantastic.
I got an original copy, but it's really badly scratched up. So, but even that sounded better than the reissue, I thought. Maybe I was just unlucky, but I got a green one and I think a brown one, and both of them didn't sound that great, actually. But anyway, beautiful piece of music. Great album.
Right, we're into the final records, people. This is a marathon video, but hopefully someone's still here watching it. But we're having a good time. I've got to do a shout out to Lawrence, who's the Mellow Man channel, who's a fairly newish poster on YouTube, and he's just got a great taste, and he's always putting up records that I've never seen before, never heard before. And he shared this, which I have to say I probably would never have picked up on the strength of the cover. This is Janice, and it's or the back cover actually. It's a soul album, but she's just got a lovely voice with that kind of rasp that Gladys Knight has. Just a really lovely quality to her voice, and this might have been, it's kind of got a slightly soul vibe, so there's a Latiny vibe, a little bit of disco soul, but a very strong kind of gospel feel, particularly with the backing vocals. And there's a couple of absolute killer tunes, Take Me Away and I Should Have Left You, are 2 classic tunes, and I picked it up very cheap. So I have to say big thanks to Lawrence, and that is the power of the VC. You learn about music you never knew about.
Well, that's the whole mission statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great. My last record is a French-Canadian record. I didn't bring any French records per se, but I've got at least something. This is Yves Laferrière. So he was a bass player, as you can see, another bass record. The bass player in a band called Contraction, which they're a Montreal kind of, one of these bands that I don't know. I mean, they're kind of classic, and this is his first solo record. It's just a self-titled, I think, and it's super funky. It's kind of a jazz rock. In the same way as, for example, McDonald and Giles is a kind of a funky, proggy jazzy record. You know the record,
Yeah,
the
I love
first
records.
McDonald's and Jar, well, the only one. It's funky in the same way. This record is not easy to find. Obviously, there is obviously if you live in Montreal, you probably could score a copy easily. But I bought this great many years ago from Canada. But I play this 2-3 times this week. This gets me every time. It's from 1973, I think, on a label called Le Tamanoir. And yeah, it's got violin and electric piano and congas and and a choir of voices and sax, flute. I mean, all the good stuff.
I think talking about the McDonald and Jars, I think the drum sound on that record is the best drum sound I've ever heard on a record. I think absolutely
so good. Yeah.
Really good. Anyway, brand new as of arrived this morning, which is the long lost Neil Young album. And I've given it a couple of plays already this morning. Actually, sounds. I mean, the kind of musically, it's really kind of sounds very close to Harvest. But the sound, a couple of people have mentioned the sound on this record is absolutely amazing. I mean, kind of Analog Planet was getting ecstatic about the kind of sound on it. Amazing kind of, just kind of has that, if you've ever played a really good copy of Harvest and got that kind of thumping bass drum sound on it, it's really got the same kind of vibe to it. So, I mean, kind of musically kind of interesting, but not absolutely prime Neil Young, but for a beautiful sounding record, this is the one.
So it was never released?
Never released at the time. It's the one he pulled when he put out Tonight's the Night, instead, and so it was all ready to go, but he decided he was going to put that one out. And it's from 70, I think it's from 70, must be 72 or 73. Really, so it's funny.
They released Hitchhiker a couple of years ago, like 2-3 years ago, which was great too. Another sort of lost album, and I think there's a third one somewhere. I do think there's
I think he's got a few of them knocking around.
Yeah, but like another really sort of like high quality lost album.
But yeah, beautiful sounding record actually. And, it's only like standard price. It's like £15 or something.
So this is really where we just share a book or a film or a bit of both that we've been enjoying in the last few weeks. And I'm going to share this book, which I actually only started yesterday, but it's not a very big book. This is one of the 33 1/3 series, which I know, Fred, you're keen on this series. I'm sure I've seen you show books from the 33 1/3 series before.
I have a few of them, yeah.
Yeah, and they're kind of like, almost like a long essay about a particular album. And this one is about Voodoo, D'Angelo's Voodoo, which is a record I absolutely love. And it's just really nice to kind of, I mean, I like people who write really well about music. So if you like that, then and you like this album, it's a great album, and it's so I'm enjoying that. And then a film. We watched the Armando Iannucci directed version of David Copperfield, the Charles Dickens novel. And it was absolutely a brilliant film. If you haven't seen it, it's just a great film, and a great film for these times, because it's got a feeling of hope to it, which is very refreshing. And only came out, I think, a year ago. Fred.
Great. Okay. Well, it's funny because when we started to get into lockdown and all that, you just thought of books that would go really well with lockdown, and I started reading. One of the books I read during lockdown was The Grape of Wrath. It's not the book I want to talk about, but this is a book about depression and hard times and how things can collapse. Another book was The Diary of Anne Frank, and that sort of led me into other Holocaust related descriptions. And the book that I'm reading at the moment is this book by Primo Levi. Primo, he was an Italian, what's his name? Can you see that? Is it clear? So Primo Levi, or Levi, he was an Italian Jew from Turin, and he got deported to Auschwitz in 1943, I think. And it's just an account of day by day how bad it was. I mean, how awful it was. And it's harrowing. You know, you read this and you've got the impression that you know he survived because he wrote a book, but you don't think he's going to survive when you read this book. And the film that I watched at the same time during the confinement time was Sophie's Choice. I rewatched it. I watched it before, but it was on. I streamed it, and you know, it sort of like went well together. Holocaust things to remind you that, you know, when you think that you're confined and you're in prison somewhere or whatever, you're not really. I mean, this is small fry compared to, say, you know, like a war or something. So it's good to remind you, you know, it could be worse.
Yeah, very true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 I got 2 books. I've got just reread this, actually, just a really good book on John Coltrane. Actually, I got dozens of books, not dozens, but I got half a dozen books on John Coltrane. And this Ben Ratcliffe book is a really just shorter than all the other ones, just a really, really good story about his life, really, and also really focuses on the music in an interesting way. So I highly recommend it. It came out about 3 or 4 years ago. And the other book I've been getting into, it's not really, almost not a book, is the I Ching, actually, which is the kind of Chinese text which influenced kind of Confucianism and Taoism and all kinds of stuff. And basically it's a series of little kind of, it's almost like you throw some yarrow stalks or some coins and you get a hexagram for the day or for the week or whatever you want to do. And it's not like a guide, it's just like a little bit of wisdom that comes up. And it's kind of got a random thing about it, which is all really beautiful. And it's kind of such a massive influence on all Chinese philosophy and lots of other philosophers that came afterwards as well.
It's like the oblique strategies for
it
life.
is like oblique strategies, very much so. Yeah, it's got the same kind of feel to it as well. But it's kind of, yeah, just really interesting I used to use this book a lot when I was much younger, and it's kind of came out again last couple of weeks and felt really good. And in films, I kind of rewatched High Rise, the film from a few years ago, which is based on it just feels we're living in a J.G. Ballard world at the moment, actually. Everything seems to be going completely mad. And it was just kind of great to watch High Rise again. Came out 3-4 years ago, Michael Fassbender in it. Really good version of the story as well.
Nice. Well, I think we're going to end the video at this moment. Certainly this VC aspect of it. So thank you very much, Fred, for being our
thank you.
Our special guest.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you
Yeah.
for yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So here we go.